All right. Hi, Ari. Hi, Yaya. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The date is March 3rd, and I just wanted to go over two quick rules before we get started. The first is that right now, this conversation is being recorded, and after the recording is completed, I will be uploading the video to YouTube and to the internet. Is that okay with both of you?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, great. And then the next item is that here at Vonvo, we don't want there to be any personal attacks against anyone. We want our conversations to stay both civil and valuable. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, we're gonna accomplish. Perfectly fine with that.
Okay, great. So we're here to discuss, obviously, Israel-Palestine. We have a bunch of people listening in. So what I'd like to do first is, just for all of our listeners, would you guys mind giving a quick background of yourself so that anyone who watches this video knows who you guys both are? And I guess, Ari, you can start, and then Yaya, you can go afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Max. Thank you for hosting me on this event. It's very nice to be here. This is my first time. And let me give you a short rundown of my background. My name is Ari Greenblatt. I was born in South Africa, and I came to live in Israel 30 years ago. And I live here with my family on the West Bank for the last 30 years. And we belong, I would say, to the majority of the silent voice of the West Bank settlers, namely of the 500,000 West Bank Jewish settlers. The large majority are people who seek, perhaps passively, in my opinion, but seek some form of coexistence with our Palestinian neighbors. And that is basically what I'm here to speak about.
Okay, great. And Yaya.
Hi, yes. My name is Yahya. I'm a Greek American. Was born in Texas. From Orthodox Christianity, I converted to Islam some years ago, and after which I traveled to Syria to study Arabic and to study Islam. And I currently live in Egypt, working as a professional translator from classical Arabic texts to English. I do not belong to any organization or political party or anything like that. So everything I say is just of my own opinion and whoever shares my opinion. Though in a discussion like this, we don't have as much time, I think, to explain everything we want to explain. So if anybody does have any questions, for afterwards about, especially specifically about the evidences for the opinions I hold, then they're more than welcome to ask me here or on Facebook. My stance when it comes to the issue of Palestine and Israel, basically I am neither in favor of a Palestinian state nor in favor of an Israeli state. I believe, represent a large, like Ari said, maybe not so loud opinion, but it definitely does exist. Especially the more you speak with Muslims throughout the world, you will see that they're interested less in a specific nationalistic state, whether it's for Palestine or for Israel, but more so looking to the bigger picture, at least for Muslims, which would be the establishment of a global or more international Islamic state in the form of the Khilafah, which is the original Islamic state that was in place for many years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are active people working towards this, and there are also people fighting, physically fighting for this cause. So that's my basic stance is. I know a lot of people would probably say, okay, well then what exactly do you have to contribute to this? And basically, I just ask, and I'd love to hear what Ari has to say regarding the specific goal or what exactly is wanted. I hear a lot of people, they want peace, they want security. So, and we all want peace and we all want security. But the question is that all you want? If that's all you want, then honestly, I think that the best step for whether it's the Israeli government or the Palestinian government or any government in general is to seriously consider surrendering to the people who are calling for the Khilafah, because the people who usually do call for the Khilafah, not always, but they are willing to fight for that. And so even if there was a two-state solution or a Palestinian state or whatever, as long as the Islamic law is not being implemented, and as long as there is a Quran being printed and people are reading it and memorizing it and understanding it, they will realize that there is a duty upon them to fight to gain control over the lands that the Khilafah historically had conquered. Specifically in the Quran, when Allah says, وَأَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُم, He said that to expel them from where they've expelled you, meaning those who had come and invaded your lands, to kick them out of your lands, to respond. So I'm just going to leave it there. That's the understanding a lot of people do have. I want to make that clear. It's not just a fringe element. It's actually people who sit down and study and read the Quran. They see these verses and they do believe that there is a duty on Muslims as a whole body to respond to anything that is considered evil or a vice in Islam. So the question then is just what exactly is the goal? And if there is peace, then is there any possibility for surrender? And that's my question.
Go ahead, Ari.
Assalamu alaikum. It's good once again to meet you and to talk with someone like you directly. I think that we need to look at the issue that you are raising here within the context of faith. You're obviously a man of faith and a man of deep integrity, and we certainly respect that. In my view, it's very important for us to split this up into two spheres. We have the idealistic sphere of thinking, which is something which I can very much relate to on that level in terms of what you're saying. I think that it's a worthy goal. I think that it expresses, it's a goal, an expression of your own deep faith. It's the way that you are seeking the good results for humanity within the context of your own faith. And therefore, certainly I can respect that on an ideological and on an emotional, religious level. And certainly, as well on a human level, I think that it's something which we very much need to respect. We as Jews, the Israelis, living in Israel. However, together with that, I think that we also need to be practical enough to realize that in order to achieve such lofty goals, it's going to take time. I always say, let's not try and achieve these great ideas through revolution, but rather through evolution. And obviously that would require of us to make a real effort to build trust between us, first of all. Because obviously one can immediately begin to ask questions about this kind of ideology if it is attempted to impose upon the situation an ideology like this through revolutionary means, through aggressive, violent means, then obviously that is something which I would not want to support. I can certainly respect your vision. I can respect everything about your view of the world through Islam, provided that you can respect me, firstly as a human being, secondly, I too am a man of faith. I'm someone who has studied Judaism and who keeps the Jewish faith very closely and has a deep bond with this land and with the Jewish people, and who definitely feels that we belong here. So I would like to ask you, in the light of what I've said, there are already two levels. There's the ideological level, which requires building of trust, and it's going to be a slow process to achieve these lofty goals. And then there's the practical level of day-to-day life, which perhaps should lead us to more practical interim solutions. I would like to ask you, in the light of this discussion, how would you ideally see the role of the Jewish people within the Khilafah, which is the vision that you are putting forth here?
Okay, so basically, if I understand the question correctly, if we just look historically at the situation, I mean, a lot of the times we get caught up, I think, in the modern, especially the propaganda that's being pushed on both sides. You'll see a lot of when speaking about Israel, for example, a lot of Muslims just say the Jews. They just talk about the Jews. The Jews did this, the Jews did that, and so forth. Even though they might be speaking about the Israeli government or the actions of the Israeli military or so forth, they speak about the Jews. How did was there ever coexistence, and a peaceful coexistence between the people? And if we look, for example, in Al-Andalus in Spain, this is well known that there were many Christians, Jews, Muslims living side by side. Did they have problems? Did they have conflicts? Certainly, any society you live in, you're going to find where there's going to be conflicts. That's inescapable. However, in terms of were there people running around on the streets just massacring each other, then I would imagine it'd be kind of hard pressed to find evidence that happened. The role of the Khilafah, of the government, is not to dictate as much as people think it's to dictate. Rather, in terms of dealing with people who are not Muslims, anyways, the Khilafah makes it clear. It's clear in the Quran and in other Islamic texts that the Jews and the Christians, the people of the book, are to be considered, be treated fairly in an Islamic state, provided that they pay the jizya tax. It's a tax that some call it a tribute tax, a tax that is paid by the non-Muslim residents of the Khilafah, of the land run by the Khilafah. Some people obviously, and we spoke about this yesterday here on Vonvo. Some people think, oh, well, that's you're forcing them to pay a tax, and you're not forcing the Muslims to pay a tax. Well, that's just incorrect, actually. The zakat that Muslims have to pay is not something that the non-Muslims have to pay. So the Muslims are taxed in one way through what's called zakat, and that actually, the money taken from that, or the wealth taken from that, is just amongst a certain group of people, certain 8 different groups of people. Whereas the jizya tax is not spent on these things, but rather spent on the running of the state itself. So you see, there's well, we might say, okay, well, you have to pay to live here. So do the Muslims. The Muslims also have to pay, and that's knowing that. And what do we say after the person's paying their tax or paying the jizya? Then what comes after that? Well, then they are basically free to practice their religion according, how they wish to practice their religion. They're free to do so. There are definitely certain things that in an Islamic state are not permitted for non-Muslims to do publicly. Things like For example, the Christians who during Orthodox festivities, they circle their church with display their crosses and so forth, and their icons and everything else. This is not permitted due to the prohibition in Islam of idols and so forth, and these are seen as idols. But they're more than welcome to put whatever they want inside their churches. And the same can be said about the synagogues, as long as there's no open propagation of their religion to others, an open trying to sway people away from the religion of Islam, which is a crime, then that is then they're allowed to live peacefully without a problem. The issue that someone might bring up is, well, where's the religious freedom in that if you're not even allowed to speak about your religion? You're allowed to speak about your religion. No one's actually said that no one's not allowed to speak about their religion. They can speak about it. There's a difference between speaking and propagating in terms of actually trying to get somebody to convert to your way of thinking. That's, again, a crime according to Islam. Now, that being said, it should also be understood, and I'll try to wrap this up quickly, is that the so-called the state or the government, if it's established under Islamic rules, we have to understand that there's no separation at all between religion and government in the Islamic understanding. None whatsoever. A lot of people say, okay, well, so basically you have your government, and then you'll have your mullahs or your clerics running things. It's like, no, there's only religion and there's only government. It's one thing and one and the same. In Islam and Arabic, the word for religion and government, deen, the word for religion, deen, has a connotation of government as well. So that being said, when someone is to propagate, for example, a religion other than the quote-unquote state religion, then that is seen as an act directly against state, directly against to the point of it's making war with the state, and with the Muslims in general. So other than that, though, other than just, yes, there's certain freedoms that have to be sacrificed living under any...
Right. Yeah. Can you... Jennifer, do you hear me?
I hear you perfect.
Okay, you don't...
Serious issue. Ari, do you hear me well? Hey, hi, Ari. I'm getting an echo.
Right. So Jennifer, there's an echo coming from Ari's computer. Jennifer, are you there?
Yeah.
There's an echo coming from Ari's computer. So when Ari's not speaking, just mute his camera by putting your mouse over his camera and closing his volume down. Okay?
Okay. Ari, can you turn your volume down if you're not...
No, you just have to put your mouse over his mic, and then you'll see a volume button.
I see. I'll do that. Okay.
Now,
he's already on mute, so I'm going to tone it down because I have a lot of questions for Ari.
Right. So yeah, go ahead and ask Ari whatever question you'd like.
Oh, have we lost our participant?
Should I not first relate to what Yahya said?
Yeah, Ari, if you wouldn't...
I couldn't understand him.
Okay, so Ari, if you wouldn't mind responding to what Yahya was just saying, and then Jennifer, you can, begin, you can chime in on the discussion based off what Ari has to say, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, basically what Yahya is trying to communicate with us is his own idealistic image of how society should look within our area, which means in our area means the Middle East, one Middle East, one united Muslim country called the Khilafah, khilafa meaning a religiously mandated territory which is governed by religious sanction of Islam, and that everybody who lives within that territory, I'm not hearing you very well, everybody who lives within that territory would have to subscribe to the rules of Islam. That is basically, to sum up, as I understand, Yahya, what you are saying. Is that correct? Yahya, do you hear me?
Yes, I'm not sure how much I got in before I was disconnected. But I think you got most of what I was saying.
And Yahya, I'm getting the biggest.
Right. So Ari, when you're not speaking, can you please mute your camera, your volume?
Your voice is very low. And welcome, by the way.
Jennifer, you should raise your volume, Jennifer. And
I did all the way, and I've lowered Yahya. So
right, and Ari, when you're not speaking, can you just have your volume muted, Ari, when you're not speaking? Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, so Jennifer, why don't you come in here and
got a lot of questions, Ari, so you're going to have to turn it back on. Yahya, I'm very sorry that I've come in just a few minutes late on this. From what I understand, you're looking at the entire Middle East as being a Muslim run territory, including Israel, Egypt, all of the Arabian countries. Is that what you're talking about? I'm sorry, I missed out.
It's actually in every land that's ever been conquered by Muslims in the past, according to the Quran, is considered to be land that needs to be retaken if it's been taken away from us. That's the understanding. Whether that includes the Levant, which is Syria, Jordan, Palestine, and Lebanon, including North Africa, so forth, Spain. I'm just being straightforward with you. This is exactly the.
I'm listening to your position. I completely disagree with you, obviously, but I'd like to know who gave Muslims all of that land to take over to begin with.
That was Muslims fought and conquered the governments of those lands and took the lands and implemented the Sharia, the Islamic law on those lands, and having done so through their holy book, the Quran, they're given the right to claim that land until the Day of Judgment. Now, no one is asking for anybody to agree with, say, oh, well, if the Quran said it must be the truth. Obviously, Muslims believe that, but it's not expected that non-Muslims would believe that. So no one's actually...
You believe that. You are an extreme right-winged, I would call even radical Muslim train of thought to even conceive such an idea, to do such a thing. We're living in the 21st century, and that's not going to happen. No one gave you that land, and I don't understand why you feel that if you conquered it, it belongs to you. I was much more under the impression we were going to be discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So what you're talking about is an entirely different subject matter, and I'd be more than happy to debate you on that at another time. But it won't be pretty. So, is there any way we can get refocused on the real issues and the title of this particular chat right now?
No, definitely. If I may, by
because this is a conversation.
Can you hear me, guys, or no?
Yeah. We hear you, and I definitely do want to, direct the conversation back towards Israel Palestine. So, in terms of in terms of
no, definitely.
in terms of the
I have an angry pig here that doesn't want to get out of the way. Will he move? Okay, let's try this over here because there's more light. Ari, have we touched the base yet of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
no.
We've just got to radical Islam wanting to take over the world.
It's not radical. It's a sincere wish of many Palestinians who would agree with Yahya.
So
this is the reality.
Many, but not most. So we're talking about Palestinian Israelis somehow coming to a peaceful agreement of some sort, and that position. Well, we're not right now, but that's why we're supposed to be here.
right. So I'm not sure.
Is that most Palestinians?
Guys, let's speak one at a time. One at a time, and Ari, go ahead.
The reality is that most would agree with Yahya. That is the reality of this region. That is the reality, Jennifer. And it's important that you realize that this is the reality.
I don't believe that most Palestinians are radical in any sense. I find the settlers to be much more radical. Hence the perhaps in the West Bank. I obviously know why you're saying this. It's because you want to defend your position as a settler. So if you're going to agree with him that this indeed is the fact, there is no argument. We'll leave you.
We need to begin a process.
I don't think he's agreeing with me. I think he's agreeing that what I'm saying is certain other people.
And it serves his purpose. It justifies him being in the West Bank.
It doesn't justify me being in the West Bank. The reason I'm in the West Bank is because history brought me to the West Bank. I'm just listening to what Yahya is saying, and I am hearing what my neighbors say to me, and what the majority of the Palestinian people believe or would want to have for this region.
Okay, if I'm going to
have...
then why are you living there? The majority of the people around you don't want you there.
You can say that for the whole state of Israel.
Who doesn't want you there?
Isn't that
for the whole West Bank.
I don't think that we can, within the context of this conversation, out of respect to Yahya, Jennifer, I don't think that we can debate about Israel as opposed to the West Bank, because we are speaking here within a context. That is the debate, as it turned out. I mean, I also didn't plan for it to happen that way, but as it turns out, Yahya is here, and he is actually reflecting the reality of the situation. So I don't think we can distinguish between Israel and the West Bank because from an Islamic Arab perspective, and certainly in terms of what we hear from our Palestinian neighbors, this is the goal. The goal is the Khilafah. I would like to put a question to Yahya, Max, with your permission.
Go ahead.
Yahya, within what time frame would you see that it is realistic to achieve this goal? What is the time frame available? What is the process that needs to take place in order to lead up to the Khilafah?
Okay, so basically, if I may, let me answer that, and then if I may speak a little bit, just to clear up any misconceptions there might be. First off, the time frame it solely depends on. On many factors. I mean, there's not just one thing. Obviously, if in an ideal world for Muslims, for us, if the Israeli side. I'm just going to use Israel because we want to stay on Palestine and Israel. Although this does apply, further beyond Israel and Palestine, but for the sake of this, if Israel decides that they no longer want to have such animosity in the region, they no longer want to have their angry neighbors, and their neighbors. I'm in Egypt, and there might be a peace between Egypt and Israel. But if you speak to the population, they don't care too much for that peace. That's not not people aren't walking around saying, "I'm so happy that we're at peace with Israel." We love the Israelis and everything. There's a lot of animosity here. If the Israeli government and the people of Israel, stand up and voice to their government that look, we want peace. We don't want this conflict anymore. We just want peace. Well, the issue with that is that while understanding in general, specifically the traditionalist understanding of Islam, that if they truly do want peace, then they will consider surrendering so that they can have peace. Now, if it's not peace they want, if it's something else other than peace, then that's a completely different discussion in terms of the time frame of when it will all happen. The next question would be, is Israel ready and willing to stay at war for another 1,000 years while the Muslims are still reading their books, they're still reading the Quran, memorizing the Quran. Young children are understanding that they have a certain obligation to take the land that was taken from them, whether it was 10 years ago or whether it was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, because the Quran does speak sometimes and oftentimes in absolutes. And there's an absolute necessity, according to the Quran, for those who are attacked to, number one, fight to retrieve the land that was taken from them. So this is the issue. The time frame just solely depends on how successful the people who are physically fighting, how successful they are in achieving this goal, and also how successful the Israeli people are in conveying to their government that, look, they don't want conflict anymore. They want peace. They'd rather have peace before anything. Now, everybody right now is on my computer is muted, so I can't hear anybody speaking because I'm just trying to make sure there's no echo or anything. But I don't. I will stop because I see lips moving. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'd really like to, for a moment. There are 4 of us here now, and I respect everything that you're saying. I understand you. I hear you loud and clear. And we've lost Max, so we're all going to have to moderate ourselves. I'd like to introduce you to a very good friend of mine that's just joined us, and that would be Dr. Mustafa. And he is a Muslim, and I would like for you, and a religious Muslim. I would like for you to hear what he has to say. From what I'm hearing from you, everyone in the region, including the Jews, the Christians, and so forth, would be forced to convert to Islam or leave or
no.
Let's go ahead and let please let someone else. Don't mind. Paul, welcome.
Yeah, Mustafa, please, Mustafa.
Moment, because Yahya is just himself, and it would be nice to get the word in.
No, but I think it's right. I think we should all moderate ourselves.
No, what is the question?
I think it's important that we all moderate ourselves, and one thing that part of moderation would be to allow someone who's been attacked to respond to the attack. I answered Ari's question. I just wanted to respond to something that you said previously.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry if I have a long wind and I speak too much. So.
No, quite contrary. I appreciate.
I can barely hear you, but Mustafa, if you could just allow me just to please just say one thing in response to what was said earlier, and basically it was just about. I'm sorry.
To cut you off and mute you so that we can hear Dr. Mustafa. Kamal, would you kindly speak as a Muslim? Turn up your volume. We can't hear you. Kamal, we cannot hear you. Please turn up your volume.
Let me hear the question, please.
The issue is, please go ahead, let the audience know your position as a Muslim, a religious Muslim, on Israel and so forth, the entire Middle East situation, if you would not mind.
As we get together here for the Israel-Palestine issue, I would say that once we have signed, the both sides signed the Oslo Peace Accord in 1993, so things, in my opinion, both countries should go back before 1967. That is the main thing, because both countries to decide what is their territory. That is the vital thing. So if you don't decide the border, then it will be difficult to go on. Then second vital issue is right of return. That's it. I think if these two issues are agreed, I think peace will be done.
And I agree as well. Two-state solution. Yaya is raising his hand, so I'm going to unmute him. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Harry, you want to say something?
I want you to hear what Yaya has to say. And then Ari.
I would. Okay, yeah, but please just, I'll try to make it fast, Ari, because I'm interested to hear what you have to say next as well. I just wanted to respond just in part to two things, and I'll make it as fast as possible. The opinion that I'm expressing, as Ari mentioned, this is not a new, nor is it a radical, nor is it an extreme opinion. It might seem extreme, so from somebody who watches media, whether it's even alternative media, this is a voice that I'm giving, is a voice you won't hear very often because the voice isn't allowed. Thankfully, we have Vonvo, and Max consulted me and asked me if we could do something, so I said sure, because this is a good platform. Now, so the opinion I'm holding is an old opinion. If you go back to the books over 1,000 years ago, this is an old opinion of what I'm saying. So even if you say, yes, well, we're in the 20th century or 21st century, we might be, but the religion that we believe in started at a specific time and was set at a specific time. So we go back and we look at what was said in the earliest times. That's just that point. The point about what Mustafa said is just best addressed, I think, in the Quran, when Allah says in Surah Bara'ah, He says, "Bara'atu min Allahi wa rasulihi ila alladhina ahadtum min al-mushrikeen." So He said that all pacts and agreements and covenants that have been made between the believers and the disbelievers, Allah and His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam do not are free of them. They're exempt from them. They don't accept them. There are no, these agreements, the Oslo Accords or whatever, any agreements that are brought forward to say that this agreement takes away some form of Muslim rights is wrong. It is not acceptable according to the Quran. So if the Quran is telling us that land is to be taken back, then that land is to be taken back. We don't say, okay, well, humans can make a new law or a new agreement or a new accord to take something that God gave to us, take it away from us. We're not allowed to do that. That's not part of our whether it's religion or political view or anything.
Go ahead, Ari. Basically, the Jewish
I
religion
want to say, I want to say something.
and Islam.
Excuse me, I want to say something, please.
For anyone that is
Yes, brother, yeah. We have,
that it's out
we have to consider.
Should be given
religion
a
is
chance
much
to speak.
older than yours. This is an issue.
I think we
Once we have religion brought into
Excellent.
if I
the issue into the Middle East, it becomes a
let
null
me tell you
void.
from the historical background. As you know, brother Yahya, the Salahuddin Ayyubi has recaptured the Jerusalem and the Palestine from the Crusaders back in 1187. But what we have seen 1916, that the Ottoman was by the Arab leaders, and they bring the British. So this is the wrong and the mistake done by the Muslims. So for the situation, you have to accept the fact. As you see the Hudaybiyah Treaty, which our Prophet Muhammad signed, many of the part was in favor of the these kafirs, not for the Muslims. So you have to learn from your mistake. That is the thing I am saying. But I support the right of return. That is the thing. But you have to accept Israel. That is in fact. Thank you.
Israel as a Jewish state, or Israel to be taken over, as Yahya has suggested, to be taken over by Islam, the entire Middle East.
So I said two-state solution. Two-state solution. Of course, Israel will be a Jewish state.
However, you missed out on the portion, Dr. Mustafa, that Yahya had suggested.
Sorry, my name is Mohammed Mustafa Kamal, not doctor. Sorry, dear Jenny. My name is Mohammed Mustafa Kamal, not doctor. Okay?
I know. Well, and to me, you are Kamal. However, I have respect for you as a doctor. Yahya had made a suggestion. I'm just going to be quick and broad with this because they're his words, so I'll summarize it, and then he can speak for himself. That based on Islam and the beliefs of all Muslims, the entire Middle East should be should be returned to the Islamic people, and that's not a valid argument. That only justifies to
Jennifer, we can't sit here and say to each other, your argument is valid. What I would say we can do.
As an atheist, I don't believe I believe it. So
okay.
I mean,
I think can I go ahead now? Can I go ahead now and reply to Yahya and to Mohammed Mustafa?
Absolutely. I think I'm moderator.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Mohammed Mustafa. Good to meet you. I think we have met before within some discussions on Facebook. I think that what we have here in this room is a very, very honest and real reflection of the dynamics, the social dynamics that are reflecting the reality of the region in which we live. And Jennifer's participation here reflects, so to speak, I would say the characteristic Western outlook onto the situation. But certainly, in terms of the realities of the region itself, I think it's fair to say that I certainly, as a Jewish person, I think that if one just does the simple math, I think that it's pretty much clear to me that you guys are pretty much outnumbered. Is that correct, or am I mistaken? In terms of numbers.
I believe so.
All right. So that being the case, I think that practically speaking, Jennifer, we need to, and this is my entire philosophy. We need to be able to. We as the Jewish people are a people of a tremendous history. We have a lot of tradition. We have a tremendous amount of faith in God. We have made many sacrifices for this over the generations. Together with that, we also have a very humanistic outlook on life. We value freedom, we value human rights, we put a higher value on life itself than on any particular dogma of one sort or another. That is the Jewish people. Now, what we are experiencing within this room, if I may say so, is really what we could call some severe social cognitive dissonance. We have four of us here saying, each one really a peace-loving and good person, but every one of us wants to pursue their own agenda, and it's not really very, very easy to do that, given the mix of different mindsets that currently is engaged in this conversation. But let me just say, with your permission, that putting aside for a moment what our particular goals are as people, I think that we share common beliefs. We share a belief in justice. We share a belief in a society which is a caring society, a society which cares for elderly people, for the weak people, society which puts emphasis on charity, society which puts emphasis on humility and on community, society which puts a lot of emphasis on family. These are all very important values that we share. And it is my view that we should work together. We should work together to pursue, to find the common ground, both literally and ideologically, certainly literally as well. Common ground is what it's all about. We need to be able to build up over time a sense of trust in one another, so that we are able to then engage in these very, very vital discussions in a more constructive way. Right now, they sound very threatening and very daunting, and in fact, I can understand, Jennifer, how you can completely reject it. But the point is that one has to get to know each other. And, you know, when one's talking to a stranger, one doesn't talk in the same way as when one's talking to a good friend. It takes time to build up a relationship, and these things require time. And this is why I say that we need to, as responsible people, as God-fearing people, and as people who are, even if we are atheists, but we are principled people, we need to be responsible enough to say, let's give ourselves time to talk to each other, to get to know each other a little bit better, so that we can indeed find a way to communicate and explore the way to come to terms with each other's agendas in a way that may very well dovetail and in fact harmonize. That we may be surprised at the results. I'm not so sure that we, the Jewish people, necessarily have to be, so to speak, a representative of the American outlook on life in order to achieve peace here between the Arabs and the Jews, or, as we say, Israel and Palestine. But it's much broader than that. It's between the Western world and the Islamic world, for that matter. I do not think that should necessarily be the role of the Jewish people. Certainly, we have tremendous appreciation for Americans, and certainly we value we have placed tremendous value on freedom, on human rights. But so does Yahya, and I'm sure that Mohammed Mustafa also would agree with me on that. I think that we need to give ourselves time to build up a sense of trust between each other. We are not going to be able to impose each other's worlds by force. If we do try to do that, we will only produce more suffering in the world. And therefore, I believe that it's incumbent upon all of us as responsible human beings to be able to say, all right, I am a strongly willed person, I have a strong faith, or I have a strong view on life, even if I don't have a faith, but let me hear the other person, let me understand the other person. These are the people who are my neighbors. These are the people who are my fellow brothers and sisters. Let me understand them once, instead of always seeing them as the enemy, instead of always seeing them as the person who has to be resisted. And therefore, our discussions should never have to be only on the lines of a particular philosophy, such as 1967 borders, that's what's going to bring peace. It's not going to bring peace. We see very clearly that from what Yahya is saying, he's not alone. There are millions, if not tens of millions of people who think like him. And certainly amongst Palestinians, Hamas certainly embraces this viewpoint. It's not something which is for us, there are many, even amongst the millions of people, of Arab people living in the West Bank, many will embrace this philosophy. It's for us, this is not anything that is strange. Why? Because it's simply the reality. This is the reality. And it's important to understand that this is the reality. This is not something which is, so to speak, taken from outside. These are the views of the people who inhabit this part of the world. Okay, so having said that,
I've been reading the comments. Really appreciate it if you keep this very even and limit our comments to approximately 3 minutes, so that everyone has a moment to speak and ask questions. But completely, again, I respect what you have to say, and again, I don't agree. But Kamal, if you would not mind picking up from there, taking a break, I'll listen, but I'll come right back, and then I'd like to have a chat. Thanks. And you're welcome, Max.
well, now that the ladies have gone,
Hello, Harry.
Are you going to speak, or you? I think Mustafa, she passed the mic to you.
okay, Mustafa, would you like to comment?
No, let Jenny come. Then we all.
Okay. Well, I think she said she's going to take a break, so if it's okay, I'll just mention something just to go off of what Ari was just saying. I think he's obviously I agree with his principle on what he was saying about we need to have civilized conversations, and the first thing to speak about as soon as I start saying something that's disagreeable, to say it's a radical or extreme is it's not helping the situation. That you should, if we want to solve these problems, we should know exactly what everyone's saying, and I do believe, and I think Mustafa even if he disagrees with the method, I think he does agree that there is a voice amongst Muslims, probably more between Muslims, more so publicly, but between Muslims that we do want a return to an Islamic identity, an Islamic state. One thing I do want to if I could just touch upon what Jennifer said about that she was saying that what I was saying means that I want everyone to be a Muslim. Of course, I want everyone to be a Muslim, but that's not what the government is supposed to do. That's not the government's job. The government's job is not to convert people or to force people to convert. This is I don't know if maybe I got cut off before I got to this point before, but the role of the Islamic State includes the existence of non-Muslims as well, through the payment of the jizya and so forth, and that includes them being able to practice their religions and to hold on to their beliefs and so forth. There are certain things that they will not be allowed to do, just as there are certain things Muslims are not allowed to do. So actually, the same thing. So it's not like there's going to be it's illegal in an Islamic state to criticize, or to not criticize, but to specifically insult another person's religion, and the same can be said for in the Islamic perspective for the non-Muslims, that they cannot also insult our religion. So there are considerations to be made. Go ahead, Ari.
I would like to make the following point for your consideration. I think that it's very, very important for Muslims to understand the past of the Jewish people. And in this respect, this is something which many Muslims do not understand fully, because Muslims, generally speaking, were not the perpetrators of against the Jewish people over the centuries. But unfortunately, the reality for us as the Jewish people is that one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons that the Zionist movement came into being in this world was because the Jewish people within the European sphere of society had reached an unbearable state of persecution. This was long before the Holocaust. I'm talking about hundreds of years of terrible massacres and all kinds of terrifying experiences that the Jewish people had to endure over many, many generations. And this has led today to what we call the Zionist movement, which is a movement of the Jewish people of the last 200 years to say, enough, we need to be able to provide for ourselves some kind of safety, some kind of security that this cannot happen again. Now, this is a strange concept for to the Muslim ear. I can appreciate that, but I want you to understand that for Israelis, this is a very, very important for the resistance that you may very much hear for your arguments. It's not because we oppose something like the Khilafah or because we do not respect Islam, but Jewish people, as Israelis and Jewish people worldwide, have a tremendous, tremendous concern to once again become vulnerable to potential persecution by other nations. So I would like to put this point over to the forum and hear what you have to say about that.
I would like to add with you, Eddie. As you know, the Jewish people have Jerusalem and surrounding areas, but before the Islam came, the pagans, later the Crusaders, have attacked on you. Okay, so we the Islam has no fault on this, but when the Islam arrived, we tried our best, either the Jewish or Christians, all live peaceful. You see, in Europe, many of the Orthodox Christians have expelled your ancestors from Europe, Morocco and other North African Muslim countries, give the shelter to you because for the humanity. It is not you are Jewish, because our Islam says Ahle Kitab, that means the Christians and Jews, there are some similarity. So on this basis, the British came in 1916, not for the Nobel Prize. They have the politics, they have the business. They wanted to impose divide and rule. That is the thing still going on. So for peace, you have to set your principle, and of course, the entire OIC have to set their principle that there must be peace with you. So for peace, you have to accept, sacrifice something, and the Muslims also have to sacrifice something. Otherwise, these things will carry on forever.
May I hear your comments about the concern that I've raised about the need of the Jewish people for security, and this being the case for, so to speak, the rights, so to speak, from our point of view of why the state of Israel should exist?
Right. Okay. If I may, I understand what you're saying, especially the persecution in Germany by the Nazis and so forth was horrible, and there's no doubt that. You look at the images, I've seen them since I was a child, and I think most people have as well. The question is then, if it was Europe that was a problem, and I think I do take a little bit of issue with that, and I'm going to veer off a little bit, but I take a little bit of issue with that because it was also the Europeans who put a stop to the Nazis. So we can't say that it was necessarily that the Jews were having a hard time in Europe necessarily. They were having a hard time under a horrible regime, a horrible dictatorship, horrible ruler, Hitler and his people who supported it.
It's not Hitler. It's not only Hitler. I'm talking about the Zionist movement started long before Hitler. The Zionist movement started because of the persecutions in Russia, because the Jewish people in France were being discriminated against, because the Jewish people in many countries all over Europe were not given equal rights, because Jewish people were expelled from different countries over hundreds of years, because hundreds of thousands of Jewish people were killed by Cossacks in the 1648, because tens of thousands of Jewish people were expelled from Spain in 1492. This is something that's been going on in Europe for a long time, and this eventually gave rise to the Zionist movement, because Jews have just said, we've had enough. We can't suffer anymore like this.
What I'm saying,
if I may just finish what my point, because I agree. I understand that it has been going on for some time, the persecution. The point I was getting at was just if it was the establishment of the state of Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, that was the goal, and they believe this would solve the problem of their persecution, then I mean, no offense to any individual or anything, but it strikes me as very strange that they would choose an extremely volatile region in which to establish their state. They could have gone to Montana in the United States of America. They could have gone to Alaska. They could have gone to some very, very obscure place. What's the point of going to Palestine? What's the point of actually going to this region? And I feel the initial response, I know that people say that there's a lineage that goes back to this land, and I understand that. At the same time, if we were to say Abraham, where was he from? He was not from Palestine, he was from Iraq. So why wasn't the state established in Iraq? I have to tell you, I'm actually making a point still. I